Hey gang, Happy New Year. Hope you had a good Christmas and good New Year's. Oh, first video of the year. Welcome. Hello, if you're new here, this is going to be a reading video or talking about reading, but if you are new here, I also do baking and crocheting and vlog type videos. The first video I wanted to make this year was me talking about how many books I've read this year and which books they were, and just like talking about them. So I started 2025 with the reading goal that I would read a chapter a day every day, and you know, if that led to me reading more than just one chapter a day, even better. It was just kind of to get me to read, because the year before my goal was to read a book a month, which ended up just not happening because it wasn't enough pressure for me to actually read my books. So this year I read, it's really not that many, but for me this is a lot. This year I read 18 books, I know, and I read 35 comics. I was very shocked when I wrote that down. I completed my goal of reading more this year. I also had the goal to crochet a granny square inspired by every book cover that I read. So I'll be showing these to you in accordance with every book that I'll be talking about. But before we get started, I feel like I should explain, because I'm going to be rating the books out of 5, and I feel like I should explain my ranking system. Let's start with 5. So 5 out of 5 stars means I was absolutely obsessed with this book. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It lived in my head rent free. I enjoyed every moment of it. It was like a book I just could not put down. No notes. 4 out of 5 stars is, yeah, I really loved it and I would read it again, but it wasn't like all the way, you know what I mean? And then 3 stars is, yeah, I liked it. And then 2 stars is, I didn't like it and I definitely wouldn't read this again. And then 1 star is like, hated it. So yeah, that's my ranking. So without further ado, we'll start with the first book I finished this year, which was, can you guess? Lord of the Rings. I started it the year before, but I finished it in January, so it counts. And I gave Lord of the Rings 4 out of 5 stars. And here's my reasoning, okay? First of all, it took me a long time to finish these books because the way that it's written, I think the writer is like way too intelligent for my brain. It's a really hard read. The way that I would describe it is like it's written like a textbook, like you're reading like a history book, because he's so into the world building and the lore and the history. A lot of the time it does just feel like lists of description and lists of facts and lists of historical names and dates, and it's a lot to get your head around. And then also, if you've just read 4 pages of description, I found I was then losing the strand of the plot. It was not an easy read, basically. I kept having to go back and reread things. However, if you listen to it as an audiobook, especially read by Andy Serkis, amazing. Amazing. Maybe I should bump it up to 5 out of 5, because I love the story of Lord of the Rings. I think the only thing was just like the difficulty that it was to read. The only other thing I had an issue with. As a queer person, reading the Lord of the Rings, I was picking up a lot of subtext between Sam and Frodo, and I don't know if that's controversial, or maybe it's like a really popular opinion. I mean, they have like the closest friendship I've ever read between 2 male characters. I know that like the history of when it was written, the writer, like it was during the war, and I think like he was very inspired by the relationships that men during the war would have, because obviously you'd build really close relationships in, you know, the traumatic environment that was. So maybe it's just that, maybe these characters are just the friendship that he experienced whilst in the war. But for me, you know, the way that they hold each other, the way that they would die for each other, the way that they kiss each other's foreheads, or like one of them's asleep and the other one's gazing at them for ages, like thinking about how beautiful they are. They hold hands. It's an insane amount of affection and care. And for me, I feel like that's love. And the thing that annoyed me was the entire trilogy that's present. And one thing I was really loving about the story as well is that there isn't any unnecessary romance, really. Like, I didn't really like the romance between Aragorn and whatever her name was. I was enjoying the fact that there was no romance storylines, and it was all really just focused on the fantasy and the adventure of it all. He just had to, like, right at the end, they get back to the Shire, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, and here's this hobbit Rosie who Sam's been in love with this whole time, who we've never mentioned before, but oh, they're getting married now. Like, it just felt so shoehorned in there, and I was like, it was like really jarring. For the person that Samwise is, he's such like an affectionate person that I'm like, there's no way that he wouldn't have been on this journey and not thought about her the whole time if they were in love. That is his character. I feel like he would have been yearning, he would have been thinking about her, but we didn't have any of that. She literally wasn't mentioned till the very end. Just really pissed me off. But I read a really good article writing about this, so I'll probably link it in the description if you wanted to read that, because they kind of spoke about this in a lot more detail and a lot better than I am. The next book I read, The Black Coast. I feel like I should say who these are by. Do I remember? I'll probably just put it on screen. The Black Coast. So this is a trilogy. One of the reasons why I started reading it was because it was set in this fantasy world where there was a king, and the king was gay, and he was dating one of the dragon riders. And I thought, okay, epic. But immediately disappointed because that plot line is mentioned in the first chapter and then just like never again. And then the whole story just ended up being switching between the POVs of two straight people that are being forced into a marriage. So that was a bit of an adjustment. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, mainly because I liked the world building, I liked the switching of POVs, and I really liked Rickard Fireheart, I think that was his name. He was really cool, like the warrior. There's a little girl that we follow who like lives in the streets, and she lives in a part of the world where it's really rude to assume somebody's gender, and it's an indication of status when you disclose to someone what your gender is. And I thought that was so interesting. So there were a lot of really cool elements, but in terms of the actual story, like I wasn't as obsessed as I wanted to be, because again, it was just a story about straight people in an arranged marriage. I have to apologize to my friend for this next one. This book was recommended to me by one of my friends. I gave it 1 star. I'm really sorry. Please keep recommending me books. So the next book I read was Let's Split Up. Oh, okay, you can see them better if I do this. In the nicest way, worst read of the year. And maybe ever. No, I'm kidding. My god, where do I start? Okay, first of all, let's start simply, okay? First of all, it's a story that switches between POVs. But because of the way it's written, every kind of character that you're reading from the point of view from, they all feel and sound exactly the same. And I read on Goodreads reviews that said the same thing, that you keep having to flip back to the beginning of that chapter to double check whose POV you're reading from. They're all the same. It doesn't sound any different, so you just lose track of what's going on and who you're reading. Room for improvement. The other main thing I didn't like about it is this book is advertised as inspired by the film Scream. Inspired by being the key word. I felt like this was if some 13-year-old on Wattpad decided to just rewrite Scream. One scene was like basically word for word taken from the film. Just a very predictable story. Am I being really harsh? I'm just being honest. This is my opinion. Just gonna reiterate, for the entirety of this video, these are my opinions. Overall, I think the writer could have done more research to make the characters and who they are, what they're doing, just feel a lot more real. The book starts, it opens with people doing a ghost hunting video, like filming a ghost hunting video. And I have a lot of knowledge on that area because I watch ghost hunting videos all the time. And I think just if the artist had taken a day or two to just watch how they're done and how people speak, he could have written that scene to feel so much more realistic, I guess. I was just reading it like it's very obvious to me that you don't have any experience as to what these kind of videos are like. And that just kind of sums up the whole book, really. So overall, 1 out of 5. Okay, and then I read the next book in the Black Coast trilogy, which is The Splinter King. This one I liked a lot more than the first one because we got a lot of new POVs from characters that we hadn't got POVs from yet. I'd say the best one in the trilogy. Like, it was building up the tension, building up to the climax. Like, you were learning a lot more about the characters. Like, everything felt more fleshed out and like, okay, yeah, now we know what's going on. We can really get into the thick of the plot. I will say, a writer that can really execute switching POVs and everything like that. The Splinter King I gave 4 out of 5 stars. Next one I read, The Graveyard Book. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, I mean, I had no notes for this story at all. I thought it was written incredibly well. and it's written to kind of like my brain type, if that makes sense. Because I, for example, with animated shows, I love the way that it follows the characters, but every episode is them experiencing something different, some new adventure. Like, it doesn't pick up from where the last one ends, if that makes sense. I'd say it's written in that sort of style. I loved all the characters, I loved all of the events that happened. Just a really good read, and I would definitely read it again. The only reason that it isn't 5 stars is because it wasn't the sort of story where I was like addicted to it and thinking about it all the time. So maybe, you know, if you're interested in reading Neil Gaiman, start with this one. But get it from a library or a charity shop, because we don't want to fund people like him. Next one I read. It by Stephen King. If you're not new here, you'll know that I have done 2 other videos on it. One was a read with me and one is a watch with me, where I watch the films. I love it. So, I mean, it's not a surprise that I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I was obsessed. It's written expertly, incredibly. He's just so clever. The plot is so complex. I would be as bold to say that there's no noticeable plot holes. There isn't any point where you feel bored, really, which is really an accomplishment considering how fucking long the book is. I mean, I have nothing else to say, really, apart from the ending. Towards the end, if you know anything about it, you probably know what I'm alluding to, the scene with the children. That's my only complaint. Why is that there? Can we please get rid of that? I don't want to be forced to imagine that ever again. Thank you. Moving on. Last of the trilogy I was just talking about, right? Black Coast, Splinter King. Now we've got The Godbreaker. I'm so sad to say I didn't enjoy it. I gave it 3 out of 5. If I was being honest, right now I'd probably actually dock it down to 2 out of 5 stars. I think, like, at the time, the writing was good. I was enjoying the writing, I was enjoying the characters. But once I got to the actual ending, it is so underwhelming. Like, you've spent 3 books building up to this climax, and it's over in like 2 seconds. He paints one of the characters as like this undefeatable god, and he's so easily defeated. Like, it's just a bit like one of the other storylines that's going on also just kind of goes nowhere, and it's a bit like I've been invested in reading about them this whole book, but what actually happened? So yeah, a couple of huge letdowns really in that story. I don't know, if you don't stick an ending. I mean, if you're interested in, you know, it's fantasy written for queer people, I would say. Next one, The Tainted Cup. See this, okay, have a look at it properly. 5 out of 5. This makes me want to do like worst book of the year and best book of the year, because this is best book of the year. Oh my lord. I got recommended this book when I went into a bookshop, right? And I listed everything that makes me love a book. Beautiful writing, complexity with the characters, subtlety as well. The writer trusts that their readers are smart enough to read into subtext and doesn't spoon feed you everything. And also faint hints of like romance here and there, and queer. Lord, every box was checked. It's not even that long of a book. It's like maybe this big. Guys, please, I'm begging you, please read this. It's part of a trilogy. The 3rd one isn't out yet, but I read the 2nd one. We'll get to that. But 5 out of 5. I was obsessed. I couldn't put it down. Just ticked all of my boxes. Okay. The next book I read was Bone Gap. This was also a recommendation from the bookshop. Unfortunately, it was a bit of a miss. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was fine. The writing was good. It's not my type of book. Like, I just was very irritated. Pretty much all the characters. There's 3 characters. I was just kind of irritated by every single one. When I was reading this, I was just groaning all the time, and I just didn't want to read it. Just an unfortunate thing sometimes. It's like, you can write a really good story and you can write it really well, but if the reader doesn't connect to any of the characters, it's just not going to hit. The next one I read, a Star Wars novel, The Dark Disciple. I gave this one 4 out of 5. I don't know why, but my expectations for Star Wars novels is that the writing isn't going to be very good. The writing was really good. As a Clone Wars consumer, I could really just see this entire book happening as a Clone Wars episode. They really captured the voices of the characters. Like, I felt that they were true to their character. The reason why it's just 4 is because I wasn't obsessed. If you're wanting to start reading Star Wars books, this is a very good one. But it won't make sense if you haven't watched Clone Wars. Star Wars people, read it. Next one I read, Percy Jackson. Now, I have a lot to say about this. Not really. The reason why I read Percy Jackson is because I know that the fandom is so prominent. And I would love to be a part of this. I see fan art all over the place. It's a very well-loved fandom. The problem is it's a kid's book and I never read it when I was a kid. I'm reading it now. So the problem I'm having is it's written for kids. So I'm just really bored, basically. Even though I liked it, I regrettably have to admit that I have given up. It's too easy of a read and it's just too, written for kids. So I'm really sorry, people out there who like Percy Jackson. I've just missed the train. But if anyone out there likes Charlie Bone, please leave a comment, because that's what I grew up on. So yeah, Percy Jackson, 3 out of 5. I hope you like these granny squares, by the way. I started to get a bit creative with them. This one's probably my favourite one. But I hope you're appreciating them, because I'm rather excited about these. And I was thinking I could make like a book bag if I put them all together. Yeah, the next books I read were 2 short stories by Patrick Rothfuss that kind of feed off of his main trilogy. Man, finish your trilogy. It's been 15 years. So they're short stories exploring 2 side characters from the main plot. So I kind of made them into one granny square. The middle is the first one I read, and then the outside is the second one. The Slow Regard of Silent Things, which I gave 4 out of 5. The Narrow Road Between Desires, which I gave 3 out of 5. At the time that I read these, I had a lot to say about them, I think because I was looking at the Goodreads reviews, and a lot of people were saying, specifically about the first one, The Slow Regard of Silent Things, I don't really understand why this is a book. Like, we're just following around a child doing random shit all day, and that's it. It's a short story, just to build character. And I think the reason why I appreciated it so much is because I love character building and getting to understand in a much deeper way this character who is very elusive in the actual book. I just really appreciated. I understood the depth of the story a bit more maybe than some people just reading it on surface level. It's third person, but it's written in, I got the sense that it is still from the brain of the main character, getting behind her brain even more than just you would observing her. I especially really loved The Slow Regard of Silent Things, and I would absolutely read it again. The only issue I had with the second one, I really loved the character that this book is based off, Bast, but I think the problem I had is I related to him and Kvothe because I was reading them as sort of queer men, I think. You know, other people on Goodreads said that as well. They were kind of picking up on that subtext. I had some maybe projection that Bast was queer. In this short story, I think it's very difficult to maintain that interpretation of that character. I don't think he is, and it was just like a little bit disheartening. But also then, like, in the main story, I thought he was being painted as a very good person, but in this story he's very deceitful and dishonest. After this book I was kind of like, man, I don't actually really like Bast. We're almost there. This video is so long. The next one I haven't made my granny square for yet. Good Omens. I am absolutely obsessed with that TV show. I watched the TV show first, believe it or not. I've just fell down this huge fandom hole after watching that. It's just very, very rare that I like something enough to read fanfiction. And then I was like, you know what, I think I should maybe read the book. And I loved it. The only thing I will say is I skipped all of the footnotes. I was finding that they were taking me out of the story, and then I was again losing the thread of the plot. The TV adaptation of it is very accurate, apart from the fact that the TV show does sort of put a lot more focus on the fact that the 2 of them have some sort of romance going on. And I think the reason why I gave the book 4 out of 5 is because the romance thread wasn't actually that prominent in the book as it is in the show, and I want more of that, so 4 out of 5. Next one is A Drop of Corruption, which is the second book after The Tainted Cup. So naturally I was very excited to read this, and naturally I loved it. I gave it 4 out of 5. I know why. It's because, I mean, I did a read with me as well with this one. It had almost everything except the thread of queer romance, and that was like, that was the one thing that would have like put you all the way up there. But it was mentioned and I was freaking out when it was mentioned. Like, I was like, as the story goes on, I think it sort of seems to be alluding to the fact that the character was moving on. I don't like that. I'm really hoping that in the last book they bring it back. And I'm obsessed with this writer. I got a different book of his for Christmas because I've decided I need to read all of his books. His writing is that good. Okay, next one, When the World Tips Over. I actually really like this granny square. I give this 5 out of 5 because I have no complaints. It made me feel a lot of things, but like, not in a bad way. Like, it was intentional, I think, from the writer. I loved all of the POVs. I loved the character development, very strong character development. Would absolutely read it again. Got it for Christmas because I was like, I need to own this book. 5 out of 5. The next book I read was A Court of Thorns and Roses. Yeah, I gave this 3 out of 5. Don't come for me. This series is very popular. This was a book recommendation. I enjoyed it, which is why it's 3 out of 5. And I thought the world building was good and I enjoyed the fantasy elements. The main character I thought was just so stupid. I cannot get my head around the fact that she's faced with this riddle, right? After the author establishes way too many times that the main villain is a villain because of her experience with love in the past. So it's like a very prominent thing already. So then she gives the main character this riddle and she's like, if you can figure out the answer to the riddle, then everything will be fixed. And I didn't even read the riddle properly. I skim read maybe the first 2 lines and thought, I think the answer's love. No, that can't be right because that's way too easy. And then we spend half the book where the character's like racking her brains, like, oh my god, what's the answer? It's so hard. Blah, blah, blah. And then we get to the point where she's like literally pretty much dead. She realizes, she's like, oh, the answer's love. I actually can't. I'm like, you mean to tell me that she didn't figure that out immediately? I don't enjoy main characters where they're just fucking stupid. And like, she's not even likable. Why the fuck does she like Tamlin? He has 0 personality. The fact that this book perpetuates, I think if you're writing a book where you need the readers to be imagining like the most attractive person possible, you shouldn't then decide what that looks like for the reader, because we don't all find the same things attractive. There's this moment in the story where it's like, oh, we have this festival every year to generate magic for the rest of the year. And the fucking festival, that's what it is. It's a fucking festival. Literally the entire ritual is just Tamlin choosing someone to fuck. And then everyone else also choosing people to fuck. And then that's how magic is generated for the entire year. I have some questions for the author. Also, I think this was just generally, this is not my thing because I really don't like smut. I also don't have a granny square for the last book that I read this year, but I read A Winter's Promise, and at the time I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but honestly, reflecting on it, I think I'm gonna give it 4 because I liked it, but it's a very modest story, and I think it's just because the main character is very mellow, I guess. But also at the same time, I'm still very hooked. Like, I finished it ages ago, but I'm still like, man, I want to know what happens next. And there's 3 more books. The author's really got away with description, and I want to know what happens between the main character and Thorn. Their relationship is very interesting to me. And it was a good winter read, which was the goal. So those are all the books. Best read of the year? A Tainted Cup. The Tainted Cup. Worst read of the year? Let's Split Up. But before I wrap up this video, I also read comics this year, 35 comics. 32 of those is The Walking Dead. I read the entire Walking Dead comics and I made a granny square for them. My Walking Dead granny square. Absolutely loved them. I mean, the first 6, basically before they get to Alexandria, I had some issues with, just kind of in terms of misogyny and stuff like that. But once they get to Alexandria, oh, it's amazing. It doesn't compare to the show. I mean, the show is amazing. I've rewatched it so much, but it just doesn't compare, especially the ending. And I just cannot believe that you can botch an ending of a show up when you have a perfectly written ending in the source material. I would definitely reread all of the Walking Dead comics, and I need to get them, really. I have the first 17. That's my reading. I hope you enjoyed me talking about these books. Yeah, I just wanted to ramble about the books I read this year. I don't really have a reading goal for this year. My goal is to write more because I'm writing my first novel and I really would like to get the first draft finished by the end of the year. But I would be interested to go back and just reread some old favourites. Let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you rated them and why. Or tell me your best read from the year and your worst read from the year. I'm very curious. If you liked me, if you liked the content of this video, you should subscribe. No? I think you should. So I'll see you next time